Okay, real quick. I didn't even do an intro to this, at least not a good one. So this is the 2008 Chevy Suburban, and this is going to be kind of the start of the rebuild of the rear end that's bad in it. And so the reason I'm going to do this is because when you start seeing it, all you're going to see me do is start messing with the brake caliper. So at this point, when I was trying to do a bolt for bolt, it's very difficult to do when you're laying underneath something, like pulling drive shafts, pulling sway bar end links, and all the, or sway. It's very difficult to crawl underneath there, set a camera up, and take all that stuff out. Everything was greasy and dirty because the pinion seal had been leaking real bad. So what I wanted to tell you is that when you see this is the start of the rebuild of the rear axle. I've already got it jacked up, already got the wheels and tires off, and I'm starting on the disassembly of the rear end. So we'll go from there. Alright guys, this is actually kind of a first part where I'm going to throw it in there in the second part. I don't know which yet, but we're going to be replacing the rear end, well, the center section basically, so it would be considered, if I can, I'm going to reuse the ring and pinion, but anyway, we're going to be replacing the carrier and all the bearings and stuff on this 2008 Suburban. Rear end is no good. I bought it that way knowing that it was no good. So basically there's some things that you do have to do, and there are some fancy tools. I guess I'm going to call it that for better lack of terminology. Anyway, you do have to remove the entire rear brake system basically. You don't have to take your emergency brake section out, because this is a 08, so it's got rear disc. There was about 2 or 3 years there where GM went away from disc and went back to drum, which are actually easier if you can get the drums off than it is to do what we're doing here. Because a problem with General Motors is when they put these brackets on, now I'm talking about the caliper bracket themselves, they Loctite that stuff on, and they are a booger if you don't have a torch or the right tools. You can't get an impact to these. So it makes it very difficult to, you can use a brake over bar, but there's not enough space. You have to have jacked up quite a ways, and even sitting on jack stands, I don't like to start getting abusive with a wrench when I'm laying underneath it. So if they've been off before and nobody's re-Loctited them, they're not that bad. It looks like these have been off before. I don't see any retaining clips holding the rotor on. This has over 200,000 miles on it, so my guess would be that these possibly the rotors have been off before. The only way to get the rotor off is you have to take the caliper bracket off. So anyway, I've got a cat that keeps rubbing on the, I'm trying to hold the, not my cat, can't help it. Okay, so you're going to need a 13 millimeter, and I don't know what the equivalent size of this is metric. I got a 13/16, because what you end up doing is to get the caliper off, when you loosen that up, that's the easy part. Then you get the nut on the inside that spins, and I'll show that to you once I get this moving, what I'm talking about. She's still rubbing on it. What I'm talking about is I don't even know if it's focusing on it. It's too bright out here to see. Okay, there's a nut on the back side of this, so when you spin this part of it, see the whole thing is turning. So that's, you got that top and bottom you got to deal with. Throw the wrench on the ground. I suppose I'm in your way, ain't I? You can't see really what I'm doing, but basically both them off. Get your you can use either one. I mean, it's a spin. I was using both there earlier. I don't have my ratcheting wrenches. I didn't bring them out. I didn't want to tear them up. So, actually, it acts like that's spinning in, and that's not supposed to do that. Bottom one's hard to see. I know I'm in your way. I can't see what I'm doing at all. I hope everybody's doing all right. We're still in the middle of the corona problem. My wife was laid off Monday. Today is Wednesday, April 1st. And trying to get into the Social Security office when everybody, what they were doing was waiting for somebody in our county to test positive. And we had one confirmed case. The next day we had 3. Now we're up to 5 as of yesterday. So that's how it works. Anyway, I've already collapsed the other side all the way because these are actually, the pads are shot. So I don't want to compress this all the way because it's going to probably push the other side out, or could push the other side out. So I'm just going to compress it enough just to get this apart. Doesn't take much, just enough. And these are aluminum, so they're very, very lightweight. Just pin them up out of the way best you can. Don't get abusive, and don't allow it to fall into places you don't want it. Don't hang it by the hose. I mean, there's a reason I didn't show you taking the tires and wheels off, putting on jack stands, because you should know how to do that if you have those tools. You can see though these pads are about done. The other side is really bad. So those are out. Now this bracket's the one that's a pain. Like I said, if they've been off before and they didn't Loctite them, they're not that bad. But yeah, this is a problem you run into. You just don't have room. And so I actually have a torch set. Get my big head in the way. However, the old Ace Hardware brand, not a sponsor. This, I don't know if this will take a factory one out that hasn't been that hasn't been out before. I don't know if this would get it hot enough, but this has been apart before. They either really tightened it up or they actually re-Loctited it. And so you're not gonna be able to see what I'm doing, but I'll show you the bolts here in a second. I'll stick your big head in there. And I know all you're seeing is probably my arm. You don't have to get it glowing red if it's been out before. You'll never get it with this little torch, this little propane. And this is basically to do. I tell you what, the reason I got it was because I didn't have a torch at the time, and since then it was almost a necessity in some cases to have an actual torch set with some of the stuff I do. Just did one of them. It's only on there, what, a minute and a half. I may have to go to the other side here. Oh, there she went. So, like I said, being said this has been off before, and I don't know if you're going to be focused on it, but this is one bolt right here, and then that one down there is the other one. That's the one I just heated up, the bottom one. And those you got to get warm. As you can see, you can't line up with any type of an impact or anything because there's just too much, in the way. So You know, I'm talking about the suspension part of it, the components that hold it together. And I noticed on my truck, of course I've had several of these pickups. Now mind you, any of the SUVs are going to have this kind of setup. There's coil spring rear end, so that would be anything Suburban related, Tahoe, that includes Escalades, Yukons, you know, all that other stuff, and then the Avalanches all use this same suspension. Coil spring with, you know, it actually has a what I'm going to call a panhard bar, which we're going to have to take out along with the sway bar. I'll get to that in a minute. And anyway, that's kind of how this works, is you just don't have the space. And then the trucks all use leaf spring, whether it's half ton, 3/4, or 1 ton. All the trucks of these years anyway all use leaf spring rear end, so they're not even interchangeable. So if you see somebody has one for sale that was rebuilt for a pickup and you think you're going to put it in your Suburban or something, nah, it's not that simple, guys. So anyway, let me finish getting this off. You kind of saw what I did. I'm going to heat the other one off and get it off, and that's just something you run into. You can do it, but I used a 3/8 ratchet one time because I didn't have I ended up having to buy that socket that's on that breakover, that 18mm 1/2 inch, to do these, because they're all 18mm, by the way. The caliper bracket mount, you know, or whatever you want to call it, those are 18mm. And yeah, I ended up breaking a 3/8 ratchet and twisted a cheaper extension, and then busted a socket to I finally just had to torch, you know, get them hot. So just keep that in mind. Okay, next video we're going to be moving on with this. All right, some things you have to do. Said you have to pull the sway bar completely down. It's just easier to take the whole thing out. And you have to take the panhard bar off, which also has emergency brake cable hooked to it. Not that simple, but not difficult to take out. So you have to take these clips off both sides and allow this to hang down, which will of course be in your way later, but you got to get this off, and there's no way you can get the pan off, or the cover, but you're not going to be able to get that third member out with these in the way. So they basically both have to come off. It's 18mm on the end with a 19 in the center, that nut, just like it was on those brakes, and you can leave the actual end link hanging. And then these are all 10mm, and then that sway bar will fall. And it's a little heavier than you think it is, so be kind of prepared when you loosen that up. Don't let it take you out. And remember what side everything is orientated on. Don't get this brake line wrapped between, you know, up on top of that sway bar. That's there for a reason, because the suspension's got to move up and down along with that sway bar. So if you get this pinned up inside her, you could crush that. So just keep that in mind. So anyway, I'm going to take these off, and we'll go from there. I'll bring you back when all this stuff's out of the way. All right, just got the drive shaft out, which are 11mm bolts. I've got the panhard bar out. I'm sorry that I'm moving this around, but my hand is so greasy. I'm tired. I shouldn't be touching this camera. Sway bar's out, except the drop links, like I said. Panhard bar, one of them was a captured nut, one of them was not, but still came out all right. Now, obviously the pinion was leaking, pinion seal. I mean, it's covered everything with oil, but I don't know why she's whining. You guys didn't get to hear it, of course, but I want to show you. Well, you're not going to be able to see it probably, because when I move my arm, everything moves, but see if I can hold it good enough. That's moving. Like I said, I know I'm moving too, but the whole, that's the reason she's screaming. It's usually whenever you hear a really bad whine like that, that's usually from the pinion. And I guarantee when we take this apart, what you're going to see, because when I start pulling this all apart, that's when I'm going to video the whole thing. Getting to this point is jacking it up, putting it on stands, getting all the back tires off, getting the brakes out of the way, getting the rotors out of the way, and I'll show you why we have to do that here in just a minute. But you have to get to that point, and then you have to make, you got room enough right there. What you see is the emergency brake cable, which I could take off, but I pinned it up out of the way, and I could actually zip tie it clear up to the top there. So if it becomes a problem, it keeps falling. But you need that entire space there, and you need this thing jacked up high enough to be able to get to the front of the pinion, which means drive shaft is likely going to have to come out, because that's far, I can't really move it out of my way. It's a one piece, which makes it pretty easy on these, even two-wheel drive. I thought this would have a carrier in it, but it don't, being two-wheel drive. But anyway, I'll get back to you and set up when we're ready to get to start. I'm going to go ahead and take the bolts loose and start draining the fluid out of it. I'm going to go eat lunch. So see you in a minute.